Thanks for the opportunity to chat. We were just chatting a little bit about what we're going to talk about. If anybody who knows me knows that I treat most rules that people give me as, if you know the United States and driving in Boston is a challenge, and I always say that I treat rules like a stop sign in Boston. It's just a suggestion. So we have some questions that they posed to us, and they thought, and we agreed, more or less, that we could follow those. And if our conversation takes us in a slightly different direction, then we'll do that. We have a mathematician here, and we have, in me, somebody who could never decide if he was going to be a chemist or a biologist, and so I ended up being both. So why don't we start with the first question, Maryna, and I'll let you have a go at it. How are foundational discoveries in different scientific disciplines shaped by distinct ways of thinking and problem solving?
That's an interesting question. Maybe one way, maybe there's one, actually, metaphor is not like if you go in a dark park and you lose your keys, then it's like the chances are that you will find your keys under the light bulb, right, under the light. So this is when we're also, as we do discovery, usually our discovery would be nearby the methods that we know and understand, or some core principles we believe in. And one can say maybe this is the same thing. It's just because these are the places where we're looking, so this is where we would find whatever we are looking for. And of course, in this sense, multidisciplinary research seems like it opens this unique opportunity to change to turn off another lamp where you can find something. At the same time, it also comes with challenges because I think once people have certain set of beliefs, it's very difficult to change them. And it seems it's a bit like true not only about people, but even about artificial intelligence. Once it's made a decision, it's very difficult to convince it that it's not a way to go. So.
Yeah. I might quibble with the question a little bit because it said foundational discoveries. I don't actually know what foundational means. I think discoveries are discoveries. Some have a larger impact than others. Maybe that's what foundational means. You know, my perspective on this, and you know, I'm an experimentalist, so I'm gonna keep firmly in what I do on the experimental side of things. No disrespect meant to theoreticians. And maybe the anecdote that maybe best illustrates how I think about this is so I have a lab with a lot of graduate students and postdocs, and always maybe 3, 4, 5 Berkeley undergraduates. And a first-year graduate student or even a senior undergrad will come in to the office at some point and say, well, the experiment didn't work. And I tell them, well, you know, you get one time in your career, at least with me, to say that, and you just used it up. So, you know, what do you mean by that? Here's what I think you mean. The result didn't turn out like you expected. So, in my experience, there's 3 reasons that happened. One is that you just constructed a lousy experiment. And we can work on that. That's what education's about. Let's look at it. What were the controls? How did you measure things? Whatever. The second one is maybe the hypothesis is wrong, and we should revisit the hypothesis. And the third, admittedly the most rare, is maybe you just discovered something. Because, you know, we scientists, the public thinks we greet discovery with eureka. But in fact, most of the time we greet discovery with, that's funny. And it's the that's funny part that I was just referring to when someone says that the experiment didn't work. So, you know, in the experimental realm, a perfect experiment, the answer is either black or white, and it's clear what the answer is. But most experiments are shades of gray, despite how we would work hard to design a good experiment, they're shades of gray. And our job is to get the shades of gray either to be white or black so we can come to a hard answer. And I think that's the same in every, at least experimental discipline, whether it's physics, whether it's chemistry, which I know a lot about, whether it's biology, I think I know a lot about that too. Yeah, it may mean replicates are different and error bars are different, but at the end of the day, it's really about driving towards a clear answer, a black or white answer. And if it's just in the middle of a shade of gray, it's time to go back to the drawing board. Maybe that's too much pontificating for now, but. Anything more you want to say about that? You want to talk about the role of interdisciplinary curiosity in driving breakthrough research?
Yes, maybe I should confess, maybe I don't have that much, like myself as a researcher, I maybe don't have that much interdisciplinary experience, or maybe I have less of it than I would like to have. And often my experience is that actually we probably, as scientists in different disciplines, we should know more about each other, about like what we do, what are we actually, what is a frame of reference of other specialists with whom you might work. And so I do have some like the good experiences which I have. Maybe okay. Probably I will here exclude like collaboration with computer scientists because they are essentially mathematicians. So I would not treat this as a truly interdisciplinary research, and maybe also theoretical physicists. They also almost mathematicians. But otherwise, I think the role of mathematicians is often in education. So. Usually we have this task of educating chemists and biologists and engineers in math subjects, and always a question which is, I think, it's very difficult to get an answer to it, is which parts of mathematics are actually important for example, for chemists or for biologists to know, and maybe which parts can be skipped. And which is also it's a complementary question. So as we've heard from a previous talk, maybe giving all that formal proofs to biologists and engineers, maybe it's not such a great idea. At the same time, maybe like knowing itself what a formal proof is actually something very interesting and actually a very difficult concept. So maybe this could be my question to you, since I have this opportunity to speak to somebody who is a biologist and chemist and experimentalist. So.
Well, maybe a short diversion to my career track. I always thought I was going to be a synthetic chemist. I loved making molecules. I loved looking at them. And so for the first 2 years in my undergraduate studies, I was a chemistry major. And in between my sophomore and junior year, so between my second and third year, I decided to take a biology course. I had taken biology in high school, but I took a biology course because it was a requirement for chemistry majors. And I thought biology was a waste of time. And so I thought if I could take it in the summer, I'd have more time to take advanced chemistry courses when I got back to my institution for the start of my junior year. It changed my life because of the way it was taught. It's probably a story for another day. But I went back to the small college where I was a chemistry major and decided to major in biology as well. And so I completed the coursework for both majors during the whole time doing synthetic chemistry for undergraduate research. So I had friends, now coming back to what you were posing and asking me to comment on, I had good friends that were chemistry majors and biology majors. And I hate to make such a stereotypical generalization, but it largely was true, that the biology students just didn't like mathematics. And the chemists, like is maybe too strong. They appreciated it. After all, you had to take physical chemistry, and most of that was mathematics. But I think the chemistry majors had a higher level of appreciation for math for sure, and the biologists thought it was painful. So, but I don't ascribe to the view that you should soften what you're teaching, because look at how biology has changed. I mean, again, I'll come back to a personal experience that the reason that I ended up becoming a biochemist is because I realized how much better enzymes were at pH 7.5 and 37 degrees centigrade in water than I would ever be in a fume hood. And so that's what captured my interest. So in a sense, I never have left my interest in how molecules get made, just more interested in how nature does it and how it controls it. So there's a high level of mathematical underpinnings to that. Now, I want to take the interdisciplinary business one step further. And in part, it's because, so I said, I have 2 appointments at Berkeley, one in chemistry, which is at one end of the campus, and one in molecular and cell biology, which is literally at the other end of the campus. If you've ever been to visit us, please, if you haven't, please come. It's a beautiful campus, but it's a long walk to go back and forth, which I have to do with some frequency. It helps to exercise. But, you know, nature doesn't work that way. Nature doesn't say, look, that's a chemistry question, and that's in that building. Oh, but that's more of a biology question, and that's in that building, not even that close physically. That's not how nature works. So how do we build a better environment for this kind of collaboration that extends to what we teach undergraduates? You know, there's all kinds of models for doing that. I'm in a building that has mathematicians, engineers, chemists, and biologists. It's Berkeley's experiment with mixing us all up together. A lot of institutions have done similar things. It's certainly, I don't mean it to be unique. That building that I'm in has great horizontal integration. I'm on the 3rd floor. If you're on the 3rd floor, there's a lot of paths that cause you to interact with your colleagues, some of whom are engineers, et cetera. It's terrible at vertical integration. My friends at UCSF across the bay have built a couple of new buildings that are actually good at both. And one of the reasons they're good at both is because they have these stairwells that draw you into them, so that you're not a resident necessarily of the 3rd floor, but you're a resident of the building. That comes at the expense of lab benches. So, you know, most times in the previous generations, even before me, you jammed as many lab benches as you could into a building. Why would you do anything other than that? Let's get as much experimental space as possible. But, you know, we scientists actually appreciate beautiful architecture on the inside as well as on the outside, and sacrifice a few benches to create the kind of environment that people interact, and then mix them up. Don't have them all sit in their respective buildings. You know, that really does help a lot. And undergraduates, that's our focus this morning here, that are in that same environment really profit from that. I have seen it in the undergraduates that have come through my lab at Berkeley, even though it isn't a great vertical interaction, it's more of a great horizontal interaction. But the design of the space that we're in is important. I think that's much more realized now than it was in the past, but let's not get away from it, even if it means that you got a lot more places to sit and fewer places to chase test tubes around.
Yeah, maybe I can also add to that, to the places where people meet. So there are actually the two projects I'm involved in, which are creating centers. One of them is not so much, it's more a mathematical center, but again, the idea is to bring people, mathematicians in Ukraine to various locations from different cities where they can interact and talk to each other. And another is the Bernoulli Center in EPFL, my École Polytechnique de Lausanne, where I work now. So this is a center for theoretical sciences, so where different mathematicians, theoretical scientists, and computer scientists can organize events, and it's actually not a very big room, but it's like one floor of a building where scientists can come and meet and organize workshops and conferences, and for this kind of meetings are very important, and also for those who work in theory, we don't have labs. So for very experimentalists, there are also the places where they can meet our research, the experimental facilities. So there is CERN, there are my husband, he's a cyclotron scientist, so there is cyclotrons where experimentalists working in his area meet, but then for theoreticians, it's very important to have these places, which are essentially conference centers, but where we can meet and talk and discuss, and then many good things come from these discussions.
You know, your comment reminds me, going back now a generation before even I was a scientist, I think many of you probably heard of Bell Labs. Bell Labs was a famous cauldron of discovery. Transistors, solar panels, lasers, information theory. And it was a unique alignment of the stars, so to speak, in a way, because AT&T, American Telephone and Telegraph, was a monopoly. And they were later broken up by the government because they were a monopoly. Whether that was good or not, that's definitely a story for another day. But the monopoly allowed AT&T to take a bunch of really smart people, put them in a building, tell them, guess what? You don't have to worry about money at all. We're going to take care of everything because, you know, we're a monopoly. They didn't say that, but they were a monopoly. They had a lot of money. But they put them in the building, and they said, you know, communication in the broadest sense, because that could sort of justify what we're doing here. We're a telephone company. Work on something to do with communication. And all of those discoveries and more came out of it. In fact, I think that, you know, there's a book. It's not the newest book, but it's still really good, called The Idea Factory, and it was written by John Gertner. And The Idea Factory is about Bell Labs. He tells a really good story about how it came to be, what they did, the characters that were in that building, and there were some wild characters. But many people have tried to recreate Bell Labs, even in the more experimental environment, although Bell Labs was experimental, but didn't have chemists and biologists in there. And you know, I can think of a lot of problems in this world that I could solve with more money, and this is one of them. It would take a lot of money to do that. But if you have the opportunity at your university to create such a cauldron, it's a great engine for discovery because you're not worrying about money. You're just worrying about ideas. And I would like to think Bell Labs wasn't a thing of the past, but it's pretty hard to recreate. We have a lot of billionaires in the United States, and they're certainly around the world, but the billionaires in the United States are all trying to live forever. So they're establishing various institutes that are studying aging.
Maybe aging is not such an inspiring topic as
well,
communication.
I think it's narrow. I think it's narrow, you know. I mean, you know, we're planned obsolescence just like cars. Sooner or later, we fall apart. And you might be able to delay that a little bit. But anyway, I'm off the track a little bit here. But I was going to give the audience a chance to ask us some questions if they had. But it says here about personal research journeys. I expounded on mine a little bit. Mm-hmm. Why don't you say a little bit about yours?
Yeah, so, but maybe my journey is not that interesting. So I'm a mathematician, and I kind of decided that I will be a mathematician when I was 12, and since then I'm like, like a train in a tracks. So that's a very...
Okay, but why didn't you get distracted by other things then?
I don't know. That they're just not as interesting.
You just wanted to, you knew what you wanted to do was try and teach mathematics to chemists like me.
Okay, this I did not say. And to be like for the people whom I taught, maybe I have not had chemists yet. So
We can be hard-headed.